Welcome to Guy at the Movies Live, your weekly source for the biggest news and discussion with special guests popping in along the way. We have said that for 8 straight weeks, and now we finally do have a guest to join us. That guest is Brandon, the Brando critic. How are you doing?
Good, guys. How are you?
Oh, just another pleasurable night, in quarantine land here in the U.S.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, well, I'm happy to be here, so thank you for inviting me.
Of course, and we'll get to some fun news. But as always, joined by the co-host with the most. That sounded really cheesy, but we'll roll with it. Sean, what's going on?
That's often been what I've been nicknamed, as the co-host with the most, even before this podcast. So I appreciate it. How you doing, Brandon? Welcome. Happy to have you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, hey guys, this is episode 8. As always, if you're watching live here on YouTube as part of Guy at the Movies Live, we'll be interacting with your comments throughout the show as we can. So fire away. This also is live on Facebook and on Periscope, which every week, surprises me, is still a thing. So before we get into this week's major news, let's start off with what we've been watching. And I have been the delinquent one this week, and I watched only one thing. And that was in preparation for a watch-along that I was unable to participate in because I didn't have power. So I finally watched Elita Battle Angel and actually enjoyed it. I think I was just in that mood for like a mindless film that, well, not really mindless, but, an action film that kind of just is all over the place. And it was fun. I would love to see where they take it further. But it was, typical James Cameron, like over the top, lots of fun. You guys seen that?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, go for it, Brandon.
Oh, sure. I saw it when it came out, and I didn't love the movie, but I was impressed by it, and I was impressed enough that I do want to see a sequel. And the one analogy I had for it was like, because when the movie started, I was blown away with the special effects and the world building and just how Christoph Waltz is bringing Elita back from the dead, and
right,
just that. It felt like watching Harry Potter or Star Wars for the first time. Like it had that type of world building element. But I think my allegory for it is like, think of a tugboat, and right at the end of the river is like the Satisfaction line. You're chugging along at full speed, and then you start to get another piece of cargo, which is another plot line. You get a bit slower. Another plot line, and it's getting slower, and it just kind of halts right there. It didn't really make it, but that was my best analogy for it. But with the special effects and the imagination of the story, I feel like a sequel, if I don't know how well it did in the box office, but a sequel I would think should be warranted, and I'd be intrigued to see one for sure.
Yeah. Sean, how about you? Do you buy into that metaphor?
I absolutely buy into that metaphor. It was the exact issue that I had with it, is that the world building, like you said, is just fantastic. Like, I wanted to see more of this world. I wanted to see what was going on. The fact that they have the, Elysium-like upper, and, she's on her way up there, and, she's trying to get there. And, I think there were some fascinating things. There are moments in this movie where I didn't care what happened to anybody. And then there are other moments, like, probably one of the best scenes in 2019 was that race that they had, the rollerball like race, where all of a sudden you realize, oh, everyone's going to be killing her. And like, it just blew my mind with how fun that was. And that put me on my feet for, while I started my quarantine. Yeah.
I'm glad that you said rollerball-esque, because that's all I thought about. Like, it was so much like rollerball with, wasn't that Chris Klein in the remake of Rollerball?
Oh, it was.
Remember that? Yeah, so that's really all I've watched, honestly, because of film festival stuff, and just not having power off and on twice last week was a big damper on things. But was able to read, a little bit, so got into different mediums of entertainment. But Sean, how about you? No shortage of films on your list this week.
No, there's not. And once again, I'm keeping it to the new ones I saw, because if I did all the past ones I saw too, the list would go to the next page of notes. For once, I didn't lose his power, although I got lucky with that. We did lose internet for about 5 hours, and I just curled up on Sam's keyboard like a cat because I just needed attention. And so that was the issue there. But I did watch a few. I'm going to just run through them very quickly. Quick little blurb. I will go with, first of all, I watched The Host. Not The Host. That's Bong Joon-ho. I watched Host. We will be talking about that later, so I'll save that for later. I watched The Tax Collector. That was the new David Ayer movie with Shia LaBeouf, who plays either a man of Latin descent, which is a problem, or a white man that has a Latino accent, which is also a problem, I think. And, you know, that was the issue there. That wasn't the worst part about that movie, which is very surprising. Like the rest of it was boring, and it was 90 minutes, and I couldn't wait for it to end.
And he got tattooed for it.
And this is so everyone was talking about the tattoos he got for him. You don't see him until the end, and I'm gonna just slightly spoil this for a second and say they're covered in blood. So like you don't see the tattoos ever. He got the tattoos for nothing. I think maybe they got cut out. Okay.
It's an odd decision.
Oh, who's just, like I can't understand that. So that was the tax collector. Now, the one I am the most complicated with is the swamp, and I am going to walk through this minefield very carefully, and just say this is a documentary that follows 3 Republican congressmen who are using bipartisanship to try to get corruption out of Congress, and so they work with Democrats on this. This was the most complicated viewing experiences I have because I don't necessarily agree with the people that are the subject of this. And
okay, good. I'm glad you're saying that.
yeah. And they're the heroes. No, but it is interesting because, you know, they are what they're working for is correct. Like the system that's going on is correct. Or excuse me, it's not correct, but it's true, it's genuine, and it's something that needs to be addressed. And they work with a lot of Democrats to do this. Then they show them doing other things and saying other things to the media and stuff like that. And it was really interesting to watch that dichotomy. I think that one lost itself a bit. And I just said to myself, okay, I like it got a little bit boring. Like it wasn't bad for the reasons I thought. Then they try to make you feel bad for some of them, which gets me a little bit. I'm walking through this minefield. So I'm walking out of it now. But those were the issues I had with it. It's still, I kind of recommend it because it's a fascinating documentary to look at.
Yeah.
Let me know when to stop, but I'll just keep on going here.
Keep rolling.
The next one is one that is, I guess, divisive, but it's kind of shocking to me that it's divisive, and that's An American Pickle. And this was wonderful, in my opinion. This was a lovely movie. Does it lose itself a little bit in the plot towards, like, you know, the second to third act? Does it lose it a little bit? Yeah, it does. But is that almost worth it for how much you enjoy the rest of it? It's totally worth it. And it's really, you know, I'm doing the, you know, I'm going over dramatic here to say that this might be Seth Rogen's best performance. And not just because of his accent work, which is fun and everything like that. But it was really, really just a wonderful performance that was put in there. Oh, there we go.
Some love here in the comments from someone who loved it and said it was absurd and fantastic, which usually is my favorite type of movie.
You will love this one then. And it's surprisingly heartwarming. But I will say Seth Rogen has great chemistry with himself. And that sounds like a joke. And it kind of is. But also it's true. Like the scenes with the two of him, which is very odd, were the most wonderful things. I'm skipping the plot, so some people might be very confused by that.
Lindsay Lohan could never.
Oh, wait a minute. That's another great one. Then I'll look at this next one here. Let's see. So this one was very interesting for me. She Dies Tomorrow, which is a psychedelic thriller, is the best way I can put it. But if you try to put this movie into a genre, you will be disappointed by expecting that particular genre. And so that's my like cautionary tale to you. Also, don't look at anything about this movie because you know, people have already said what it's about, and I don't even want to say that. But this movie is
recommended or no by you?
It's recommended. I will say this is all about symbolism. It's a lot of symbolism and artistic, and maybe not a lot of plot and like not a lot of understanding of the world. But for the symbolism and the engagement, it does. You know, it kind of delivers in that. So, you know, for the art piece people. Now, the last one I did was I Used to Go Here, and I'm still getting I watched this last night, so I'm still getting my thoughts in on this one. But this stars Gillian Jacobs, who is a recent amateur author. who just got her book published. Her book tour closes, and or cancels, and so she pretty much has to go back to her own college and try to plug the book there, and sort of face a past professor, the friends that are there now, the people that live in her house, and she sort of befriends them. It's interesting because this is the, typical, close to middle age, in their 30s, like life going sideways, but it actually sort of works very well. I still got to think that one over a little more. So I'll just give you a gook there. But
you always have such an eclectic list of films that you watch. Like you definitely go through every genre, and we even got you breaking into the horror genre this week, which we'll talk about. So,
oh yeah.
All right, Brando, you're up. What have you been watching?
Okay, so they're not new movies. I'll say that right now. For some reason, I don't know what it is about like movies coming straight to VOD or coming out on Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and stuff, but I've been so behind on those. Maybe it's just because I'm not particularly interested in watching those. Like I saw King of Staten Island like when it came out, and I saw Extraction, but probably those are the only ones that I saw like on demand or on Netflix. I've been actually trying to the movies I haven't seen yet. You haven't seen those? Like everyone has that list, right? I've been trying to make it smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I've been doing that. But I have been doing a couple of rewatches this week. I did a watch along for Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets last night. That's my personal nostalgia kid favorite one. Girl I'm talking to, she had never seen any of the James Bond movies, so I showed her Casino Royale like months ago, and now she's like, can you show me at least one from every single decade? So we watched GoldenEye and License to Kill. Me being a huge Bond fan, as you can see back there. Of course, I want to show her the ropes. But one that I just saw for the very first time today was Scent of a Woman. Al Pacino, man. The guy's a monster. The guy commands the screen. He is amazing. When I got back from vacation last week, I put on Spaceballs before I went to bed. Just some fun,
classic.
Comb the desert. And then for the first time, I watched No Country for Old Men and Hook. One of those movies I really liked. The other one, not so much, unfortunately. You guys can guess which one is which.
Hook was your favorite, I bet. Yeah.
Really?
I don't mind Hook. There's nothing really bad. Rufio. I mean, I don't know. I really wanted to like Hook. And for some reason, I felt it very hollow. It looked pretty. It had the John Williams-esque music. I don't know if it was him. It had the Spielberg direction. It had Robin Williams in it, but it just didn't. It didn't feel like it had any substance, and it felt like a very big retread of the Peter Pan story. And it wasn't bringing in. Oh, it was John Williams. Okay, gotcha. So I like that part, but it didn't bring enough new to the table. You know what I mean? But No Country for Old Men, like that. I loved how silence is used so effectively in that movie. It's not like a bunch of like tension. It's just slow, calm, not much going on, but that's what makes it so scary. And yeah, man, I have videos for both those movies coming out pretty soon, so stay tuned for those. But that one impressed me. I was so glad I was able to finally see that.
I'm gonna troll your Hook movie.
Go for it.
Review. I think just going back to that, we talk about movies a lot from the past that maybe we saw before that we enjoyed, like back in the 90s or whenever, and now we watch it and we're like, oh god, what was that? And Hook is one of those for me. Like I enjoy it still, but it's definitely not what it was the first time I saw it. And I think that a lot of times those movies were good at the time that they came out. They responded to what was wanted at the time in terms of storytelling on screen, but given what we've seen today and what we've been able to witness on the screen, I don't know that those movies are going to hold up much longer into the future.
Yeah, like Jumanji's a movie for me that I didn't watch it growing up. It came out the year I was born, and I watched it as an adult, and I'm like, I don't like this movie at all. Like, I was not a Jumanji fan, and then everyone was going like, you had to have seen it when you grew up. Like, that's the only way you can watch it.
Yeah.
And to that I said, well, then why is Wizard of Oz so famous? If going by that logic, then you cannot watch Mary Poppins. You cannot watch Sound of Music. You cannot watch all these wonderful children's movies in the past growing up because you didn't grow up with them. So I don't really buy that argument per se, But I do see what you mean by like, there's movies that I watched as a kid that I love, but when I go back on them, I'm like, ooh, Snow Dogs.
Snow Dogs.
I love that movie when I was 7 years old. Man, is that a stinker. So it happens to all of us.
It does.
Nostalgia is the driving force for the movies that we grow up with. I mean, when you think about it, Hook is one of those movies where a lot of us grew up with it. A lot of us have repeated the lines. I mean, Rufio right there, like, we just go right for it. And then when you look back at it, it just accesses your childhood again. So you don't sort of look back and you don't sort of say like, oh God, this is terrible. Now, me as like a amateur movie critic, I do kind of go like, this is pretty bad. But then I just say to myself, but then that nostalgia overpowers. And then that's what I really, really hold on to. I look at something like, I had it and I lost it. But like I look at the, we can look at the Adam Sandler effect if we want to, where we look at if Happy Gilmore was released now or Billy Madison was released now, would we like it as much? And maybe we would. But now, they were released back then, and I love those movies. And
did the Penguin tell you that?
Exactly. Like that's the kind of thing you can just immediately go to them. But I think that nostalgia sometimes has that power. Well, eventually they'll probably do a 10-episode Netflix series of Hook that they'll try to reboot because they can't think of anything else.
They're doing it with the Mighty Ducks. That's a movie with me that I grew up with, and I still love to this day.
Yes.
If I put my critic glasses on, I could probably pick that movie apart.
Sure.
But the nostalgia factor definitely overpowers that for me. Sometimes Thomas the Tank Engine, Magic Railroad with Alec Baldwin, that didn't work.
Oh my
god! But you know what I mean, though, right? Yeah, like I totally get what you mean. Like if you watch Hook growing up, and that's the thing too. I said even in my video coming out soon, I'm sure that if I saw that when I was younger, it would have totally been in my wheelhouse. But I didn't, so I wanted to like it. Every movie I see, I want to like. I think it should be a given to people. So
yeah, I mean, we would hope that that's the case, right? But unfortunately, when you watch as many as we all do, a lot of stinkers in there. But let's jump into the news because there is a lot of news to discuss, and I think we're going to be talking about some films that we are excited for moving forward. Right after we ended last week's recording, a big piece of news broke about the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This in the form of I don't know if it was confirmed at the time, but I think the director actually did come out and confirm it like an hour later. Marvel has tapped Candyman director Nia DaCosta to helm the Captain Marvel sequel. So Nia DaCosta becomes the first Black woman to direct a movie for the studio, and the follow-up to the 2019 film is currently slated for July 2022, but who knows what happens with timelines and stuff moving forward. What do you guys think of this hire? Have you been familiar with DaCosta's work?
So I've never heard anything from her or seen anything from her. I know that she has a very, very limited catalog, and I know one of her big ones is coming out very soon, Candyman. And she has one other one. I believe it's Little Woods, and I've heard it's great, so I may be checking that out. I just think this move in general, because Captain Marvel is an outcast. Captain Marvel is a woman, and I think that a situation like this calls for someone with that perspective. I don't think it was lacking in the first Captain Marvel. But I think that in this situation, there is going to be a perspective having a Black woman filmmaker in there. Now, am I going just on the fact that she's a Black woman? Unfortunately, yes, I am. But I feel like she does have that perspective, or, most of the time you can have that better perspective to make something interesting. Mainly what I'm thinking about, though, is that this means great stuff for Candyman. Because if she's getting a Marvel gig, that means that this Candyman film at least has the rumblings of being excellent, which it does look excellent. There's no surprise there. But that part of me just says, all right, so this casting, this selection, which is a great selection, a great hiring. I'm very excited for it. But this means that Candyman is good. And that's what I'm the most excited for.
Yeah. Brendan, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think you nailed it right on the head. So I haven't seen Little Woods or I haven't seen Candyman, but it shows on Rotten Tomatoes here that Little Woods has 95%, and that is a very hard task to do, is to get a film that high on Rotten Tomatoes. And again, Rotten Tomatoes is not whatever, but we're not having that discussion now. But you know what I mean. And like you said, with Candyman not even out yet, and Marvel announcing this hire, it can only bode well for Candyman. I'm sure that some Disney execs have seen it, like a pre-screening, and going, okay, that this lady knows how to direct a film. So, and as for Captain Marvel, like I didn't like the first movie. I do want to give it another shot. I do want to give it another chance to actually see if my thoughts have changed on it. It happens from film to film, but you know what? Again, if you hire talent, I always think that's a good option. So if you have a film that, you know, Little Woods that has great reviews, and Candyman coming out, and Disney looks at it and says, you are capable enough with just 2 feature films. I don't know about, you know, student films and short films and festivals or whatever, but 2 feature films and then get straight to Marvel can only bode well. So hopefully she does a good job.
I'm excited for the other characters within the film too. I think Maria Rambeau being, you know, a black female heroine in the first film, and having a storied history within the Marvel comics, it will be really great to see how some life is given to her as well, because I believe the first one was directed by 2 men as well, which is always kind of interesting, you know, going into the first Marvel female superhero to have her own film. And really, I don't know if that's really the best approach in giving it time to breathe and giving it the room it needs to succeed. Captain Marvel also had a tall task in terms of, you know, what she was teased as being at the end of Infinity War, and then setting her up for Endgame. But I'm excited. I mean, people forget that Brie Larson is a Oscar-winning actress, and you know, there's a lot of talk about how flat she was in that movie. Part of that, I think, is the character. I'm also a very big believer in the directors have to get the best performance out of the actors, and it sounds like Nia DaCosta is building a nice little repertoire for herself. So I'm excited to see what she does with Marvel. A film that I'm not too excited for here. Ready? These are the transitions I told you about, Brandon.
We like to do segues.
It's all good.
We have another Tron film coming, which has been rumored for a few years now after 2010's Tron Legacy with Garrett Hedlund. This is going to star Jared Leto and is from director Garth Davis, who the biggest, I think, title to his name is Lion, which starred Dev Patel, if I'm not mistaken. We don't really know anything else here. We don't know if it's a direct sequel to Tron Legacy. We don't know if it's a film that's within the world of Tron. But do we need another Tron movie?
No. Go for it, Brandon. But I'll put in no.
I mean, so we were talking about this before the stream went live, and how Tron Legacy has its followers. It wasn't that super hugely successful, and I remember in Disneyland they had electronica right every Friday night. That was awesome, by the way. But we're not talking about that. And I'm just talking about like the general consensus of people wanting another Tron movie. And we said, you know, there's a really tight knit niche following for Tron Legacy, and I was one of them in high school. But then I grew up and moved on with my life. But no shade to people who love Tron Legacy. I find that film quite fun to watch, and everyone just talks about the Daft Punk score. And it's so funny. I think there was some Tron news that came out like a month ago or 2 months ago about like rumblings about Tron 3. And I had about 10 people message me, oh, it's official. They're going to make Tron 3. And I'm like, didn't they announce this like 5 years ago that it was official with Jared Leto again? So I don't know. Like with my old Tron Legacy past and them saying, oh, we're going to get another Tron movie. I'll believe it when I see it. And I'll believe it when there's actually the cameras start to roll. And Tron Legacy actually filmed in Vancouver, where I'm from. So if Tron comes back here and I start to see some filming, then I'll be like, okay, a Tron sequel is actually in the works. Hey, man, you know what? Bring me some more awesome visuals. Bring me some more light cycles. Bring me some more Daft Punk. Give me a story that's really intriguing. Garrett Hedlund is serviceable. Someone told me I look like him, which is a bit pushing it.
You can see that a little bit.
Probably distant cousins, not opposed to doppelgangers. But you know what? Yeah, just if it's an intriguing story, and the visuals are awesome, then sure, bring it on. But I don't know how many people are really excited for another Tron movie. And I don't know if Jared Leto is the biggest name to draw an audience, especially after Suicide Squad. Yeah, I don't know about that.
Sean, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, you were mentioning your list of movies you've never seen, and I've never seen a Tron movie, including the one in the 80s. I've not been actively avoiding it. We lost him.
Oh, Jesus, we lost our host.
I'll keep going.
We're going to take over our show now.
I'll take over. I've never seen a Tron movie. I've never really been interested in a Tron movie. He's back.
I don't know what just happened there. I apologize.
No problem. I was just basically saying I've never seen a Tron movie. I haven't been avoiding it. It just hasn't been presented right directly to me. And in this quarantine age, I need movies presented right to me, and then I'll watch them. But I look at this kind of thing, and first of all, I look at Garth Davis, I believe the director's name is. Lion was on my top 10 of the decade. I think Lion is an amazing movie. It's a very underrated movie. I absolutely love that movie. I don't exactly know how that translates to a Tron movie because they are extremely different genres. And so that's my issue. Jared Leto, oh, cool. He's probably going to be like all weird and shit. I whatever. So at this point, I really, there's the part of me that doesn't care, but then there's the part of me that always says with every single time we get this news, if it's good, it's good. Yeah. And that's a very Buddhist-like way to say things. They're just kind of like, it's just like, if it's good, it's good. And then I just say to myself, it's good. Will it be? Probably not, but that's how I'll try to deal with the news.
Yeah, I figured this was coming, not only because it's been rumored forever, but just at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida, they've been building a new Tron roller coaster in Epcot. So it kind of just, I was like, all right, like you're going to roll with this property a little bit more, whether that's a Disney Plus series or something, another feature film. So it looks like we went feature film route. Before jumping to the next story, I do want to say, because I know a lot of the people watching, as well as a couple of us were talking about the hockey game that was just on. It is NHL playoffs. It did just end with 9:33 remaining in the fifth overtime. Tampa Bay 1-0 over Blue Jackets. So they're going to be really tired.
Oh, Jesus.
It's insane. But see, we can multitask here. We can talk sports. We can talk movies. We can do it all. We can multitask like John Wick can kill multiple people at a time. And that's what he'll be doing in addition to filming 2 movies at a time, with John Wick 4 and John Wick 5 filming back to back moving forward. You were wondering where that was going, weren't you?
A little bumpy there, but it works.
I mean, I'm telling you, did you like when you were talking about us multitasking, you weren't complimenting us on multitasking. You were going for the John Wick, weren't you? Or did you?
No, there was a late arrival.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Very good. On the feet. I like it.
But hey, we knew John Wick 4 was coming. Now it's confirmed that John Wick 5 is in the works, back-to-back filming, probably, a result of what's going on in the world right now and just having to knock those out. But John Wick, let's, I guess we can move through this one quickly because I know we've talked about it in the past, but yay or nay to 5 John Wick films?
Yay. I mean, if they explore the world, I think the third one may have slowed a little bit at times, but it was fun to sort of, see the world a little bit more. But, I'd say that when you have 4 and 5 there, you have a little bit more of a cohesive unit throughout them. And I think that, you don't get lost in the shuffle, which is probably a good thing. It also shows that you have faith in everyone involved. And maybe that, like I said just before, the vision will stay the same.
Yeah, I mean, I have a very unpopular opinion with the John Wick movies. I believe, though, when I watch them, that the world and the story has kind of outgrown the premise, where it gets so huge. And I'm watching this one guy take on all these people, and it's not a challenge anymore, where it's like, I know exactly what's going to happen. This guy is going to defeat all these people. He's going to defeat all these people. He's going to defeat all these people. Whereas I find that the story is too thin to really hone that in for so long. But that's just my own personal opinion. John Wick is a very, very popular franchise. So, and I'm just kind of glad, though, that we actually had a movie just come out of nowhere that was just based on nothing before. It wasn't based on a comic book. It wasn't based on, some book series in the past. It wasn't based on another movie. It wasn't a reboot. It wasn't a sequel. It wasn't whatever. And we have this new franchise going forward. So that gives me hope that there can be a movie that can come out about whatever, and if it's successful, that people will start to watch it. It's not based on some previous property. So for that, I'm excited for it. And you know what? It's a big franchise that people love, and they keep making money. So honestly, if John Wick 5 makes a shit ton of money, and Keanu Reeves still wants to do it, I can see them going 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. As long as Keanu Reeves can still do it, and as long as people still want to do it, I have a feeling that John Wick, they'll still write more and more and more. So, sure, why not?
Well, Alex Winter has Keanu Reeves and John Wick to thank for the potential of, or I guess for Bill and Ted being greenlit, the third one, because that brought Keanu Reeves back. But I completely agree with your opinion on John Wick, Brando. I've said this multiple times, but my whole view on John Wick is that the first one was a lot of fun and really, I think, caught people off guard. They weren't quite sure what they were getting with it. And then it was like, all right, we're going to do a second one. And they expanded the story a little bit. I liked the second one a lot. The third one, I feel like it was like, oh shit, we have to do a third one. So here, let's expand the story in these ways. Let's go out this way. Let's figure out like a new angle to take with, what we're seeing. And that's at the time that they were talking about the TV show for the Continental and really just blowing it all up. So the fact that 4 and 5 are filming together, I like that because hopefully, like Sean was saying, there'll be a better story. There'll be something that's a little more connected and a little more fluid that actually makes sense. Not to say that 3 didn't make sense. I just felt like it was a lot of like throwing shit on a wall and seeing what sticks. So I'm looking forward to that for, the integrity of the story. And again, if they're making money and they're a lot of fun, my dad often says, it's a good killing movie. And that's kind of how John Wick is, right? Like, what you're getting with them. You're not looking at an Oscar contender, but as long as you're okay with dogs dying or getting threatened with their lives, it's a fun movie to watch.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in addition to the announcements of what's coming down the road in theaters, we hope at this point, that's the expectation. We are seeing some films vacate their slots on the theatrical release calendar and head to VOD or other streaming platforms. The first that we're going to talk about is Antebellum, which is a surprise to me that this is skipping theaters. But it's an upcoming horror film that Lionsgate has decided to send straight to video on demand, starring Janelle Monáe. It's been highly anticipated for quite a while. And there's not a ton known about it. There is a little, I think, time travel aspect to it in some way, but it will bow on September 18th on VOD. Are you excited for this one?
I was very excited for this in the summer. It was just going to be a great summer thriller. And the trailer looks very confusing and very interesting. And so I understand why things are going to VOD. This one seemed like one of the ones that was going to be a dirty stay out. This one was going to be like, we're not going. They were going to Nolan it and just like really try to be in theaters. That's what I'm going to call it now, is Nolan it.
Nolan it.
I think I did see a few ads saying that like it's going to be in theaters and VOD.
Yeah.
And so that tells me what the future is going to probably bring. Where, when theaters are a little bit more scarce, I didn't know when to bring this up, but the theater down the street for me just closed. That's going to be it for that one. I still got one with the comfy chairs that I like. So it's going to be okay.
They closed for good or
closed for good?
Oh, wow.
Closed for good. Yeah. So that was very upsetting to hear. And so now I'm thinking then I'm looking at the news for today and I'm like, oh, great. No, there's never going to be a theater again. And I think that the future is going to be where we're going to have the opportunity to see it in theaters and see it on VOD, maybe even after this COVID situation. Not for the streaming platforms. Those are going to be on the streamings no matter what. But that might be what we see from now on.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm not the biggest horror guy. I'm a very big noob when it comes to that genre. I'm still trying to, ease my way into it because that's just a genre I didn't grow up watching.
So is Sean. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm still pretty new to that. But in terms of it coming to VOD, after the announcement of Mulan going to VOD, and I remember I don't really go into big movie news, but I remember it was always like, which one's going to come out first, Tenet or Mulan? Tenet or Mulan? Which Disney wants to be the first ones. No, Warner Brothers wants to be the first one. Now with Disney saying Mulan is going to come straight to Disney Plus and then have that price tag, I think the amount of movies that are going to be where studios are going to say we should wait till theaters, Black Widow, Wonder Woman, No Time to Die, Tenet, maybe Dune, and that's it. Honestly, could see absolutely every other movie going to VOD. Because if Disney says we're going to put Mulan to VOD, and China's box office, and they wanted to get this huge thing, they wanted all of China's box office. With that going to VOD, I think the floodgates are open. Because everyone's saying like, oh, this whole pandemic thing is only going to be a month. It's going to be fine. Like, what's James Bond doing going back to November? It changes by the hour. Yeah. This whole pandemic thing. So it's so unpredictable. And with them waiting this long, I find that, you know what? If it's not any one of those 5 movies, bring it on to VOD. I think that's what they're really going to do.
And I think that's the debate that a lot of people are having right now, is what the future of VOD looks like. I know, other podcasts that are doing the same type of talking that we're doing are debating whether or not it's mid-level films like you're referencing that are going to be the ones that are heading straight to VOD or PVOD or whatever you want to call it. And that's, just like what we got today with the announcement that Run, Sarah Paulson's new horror psychological thriller, is heading to Hulu. Which is a surprise to me. It kind of was one of those, Sarah Paulson, I think, is a very popular actress. She's very talented. And so I never really expected that to get bumped, but at the same time, I kind of forgot it existed. But that movie is directed by Anish Chaganty, who directed Searching, which was actually one of my favorite movies of the past couple of years, just because of the way that it played with the found footage type of genre. But the film is about a mother-daughter relationship, and essentially the mother is really kooky, and the daughter starts figuring out or finding out secrets and discovering secrets that go to explain why she has such a tight stranglehold on her child's life, and has actually raised her in a quarantine situation. So, hey, maybe we can relate in a way. Any interest in Run on Hulu? I know, Brandon, you don't really have an option here.
No, Hulu's not in Canada, folks. Unfortunately, you need to do some VPN blocking with that. But again, not a really big horror fan, so it wasn't on my radar.
For me, I should, Brandon, I stand with you, not in the Canada thing, but in the weird about the horror thing. I've just recently gotten into horror movies, and I treat them a lot like spicy food, where I love it, but I'm very weak with it. So I scream a lot. I'm like inside of my chair like this and stuff like that. I'm very scared the whole time. And yeah, exactly the same thing with spicy food. It's like I can eat this ghost pepper, and then I just cry for an hour. When it comes to this one, I love the idea of Sarah Paulson being the lead in a horror movie. I understand that Sarah Paulson and horror have been synonymous on TV, but I look at this one and I say that the first, I think it was like 5 or 10 minutes of Bird Box with her, she was great, and she has 6 minutes of screen time. But I look at it and I just say like, oh, she can kind of do this where she plays some eccentric character. She's really good at really upping the stakes. And I just really think that this could be a fun one. I tell people a lot. And once again, sorry, Brandon, I tell a lot of people to get a subscription to Hulu, because the content on there is crazy. Movies, not so much right now. I mean, they're big with the horrors. They have their series Into the Dark, which is a monthly horror movie, basically. They have, one of my favorite movies of the year, Palm Springs. And then, they also just have, and we're not going to talk about this now, but television that is just absolutely out of this world good. So it's one of those things where I think that there's still like everybody comments on my stuff being like, should I really get a Hulu subscription? I'm not going to get a Hulu. I don't want to get a Hulu subscription. And, I guess I kind of get it. It's another streamer, and we have like a million streamers going on. But I do recommend to start to get interested in Hulu.
Well, especially now with the Disney Plus package, it kind of makes sense to put it all together, because Disney is the largest stakeholder in Hulu. So I do think that their content for movies has really been improving here and there. You can always find some film that you completely forgot about that maybe was released 3 years ago, and you wanted to see, but that lasted 2 days, and then you come back across it and you suddenly watch it. So what we're seeing is that the streaming wars are certainly heating up, and Apple is certainly doing its part in trying to keep pace by today announcing that they have locked Martin Scorsese to a first look deal for film and television. Apple is already funding all of his upcoming films, Scorsese's upcoming film, Killers of the Flower Moon. I believe it's rumored at like a $200 million production. And it stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. This is a fascinating announcement to me, only given that we've seen Martin Scorsese kind of struggle in the past with funding his films, The Irishman being an example of that, which had went to Netflix last year, or the year before? Last year. I don't know.
Yeah,
time doesn't matter anymore.
6 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And we also know that last week Apple signed its first look deal with Leonardo DiCaprio's company. So Apple's really stacking it here. They're getting ready to, I think, make a bigger splash with their streaming platform that arguably launched with not much fanfare.
I think that artists want to art. And I think this is what we just saw with Scorsese. I think Scorsese loved the idea that he was able to make a 3.5-hour movie on a budget of, I think, was literally infinity dollars. And so I think he was happy to do that, where he was just like, oh, I can, I don't have the restrictions of a production company. I don't and obviously there would be restrictions. I'm being a little bit, boisterous with Infinity, but there would be he can sort of be a little bit more free in these situations. And I think he sort of found his footing where he said oh, Netflix let me do this. Now I'm inking the deal with Apple TV. They're going to let me do a whole bunch of stuff, especially with Killers of the Flower Moon having such a high budget. So I think that, he just realized he's in this nice niche. And so our other director is going to say, all right, now I'm going to start doing this because, the budgets are a little bit easier. Because I don't think Apple TV, unfortunately, I don't know if they say, can I sell this? I don't think Netflix says, can I sell this? I want, because they, it's on their streaming, they're set with it. I mean, they obviously want it to be good, but I don't think it's the same way that they're not trying to get butts into a theater the way, major studios are. So that's just something that's fascinating of where this industry might be going. And once again, the movie theater down the street just closed. I'm just trying to deal with that.
Here's a tissue. Here's a virtual tissue.
Thank you. Virtual tissues are all I need.
Yeah, I mean, you got a good point there. Artists want to art, right? There are some people that want it to be in theaters, Christopher Nolan. But, and this brings me back to, I think it was around this time, around July 18th of last year, it was Lion King and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Lion King destroyed it at the box office. Whereas that to me just showed that, a director's name isn't enough to get people in movie theaters anymore. It's The Lion King? It's a movie I've already seen. Let's watch that again. And there's Quentin Tarantino, Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt in this new Once Upon a Time in Hollywood movie, Margot Robbie. Let's watch Lion King instead. So I feel like the age of the big ticket director and the big name star, that age is dying. And so with Scorsese, after the success of The Irishman on Netflix, I think it only makes sense to going, okay, well, Apple TV Plus, that's the place where I got to make it. And man, oh man, when you're talking about, they got Leonardo DiCaprio's company too. I just have to think that, just for, of course, us being movie nerds, we're going to own all these streaming services. Of course, we're going to have Apple TV Plus. We're going to get Hulu Plus. We're going to get HBO Max. We're going to get NBC Universal Plus. I think that got announced or something. Or that was a rumbling or something, but it's so funny. Netflix was created to kind of get rid of cable, right? We don't need all these cable packages. We're not going to watch all these channels. But now that there's hey, you want to watch Friends again? Well, you got to get this streaming service. Then you got to get this streaming service. And then for just general audiences, it's I don't want to pay $100 for 10 different streaming services. So I feel like the content is going to get diluted, which let's see what happens, especially during this economy too. We're going to be I got one streaming service. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to choose Netflix. I'm going to choose Disney Plus. Oh, I wanted to watch that new Greyhound movie. Oh, it's on Apple TV Plus. It's not enough for me to get that streaming service. So that gets into a whole other discussion. Yeah. But you know what I mean?
But it's funny that you're saying that with the cord cutting for cable, especially when the most recent releases of streaming services like Peacock and HBO Max are touting, at least around here with Xfinity or Comcast Xfinity cable, that you can get a free year or you get free access with it. So it's kind of you're just creating a whole nother on-demand system rather than an actual standalone streamer.
It's going to branch out like this again, where it was supposed to go like this. Everything's in one place. Oh wait, no, it's half of it's in here, a quarter of it's in here, but you got some new stuff that's over here. It's $10 to get in all these different boxes.
Right.
So, I mean, for a general audience, like, and for people who only go to see one movie a month on average, are they going to be willing to spend all that money? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So let's hope that Scorsese and Leonardo DiCaprio's names are big enough to warrant people to buy a subscription to Apple TV Plus to watch those big movies. So we'll see.
I mean, it's crazy when you're talking about big names because that's exactly what Ben Affleck is trying to focus on in his next film that he's directing, which is an adaptation of Sam Watson's book, The Big Goodbye, Chinatown and the Last Years of Hollywood. So this film is going to feature, he'll have to cast some pretty big names, thinking about like Roman Polanski, Jack Nicholson, Faye Dunaway. Like, he needs actors to play those roles. To really discuss or really dive into Chinatown and kind of old Hollywood days. So it's kind of an interesting combination with producer Lorne Michaels from Saturday Night Live being on board as well. But, you know, I've kind of liked Ben Affleck's last directing jobs. So I think he's a good director, and I'm pretty pumped to see what comes out of this. I think this will be a neat dive into a time that I'm not really the most familiar with.
Is this a documentary or is this a feature?
Feature film.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, man, I'm on board. I think, you know, based on his track record, I've loved every single one of his movies. And I know Live by Night, that's a very unpopular opinion, but man, I thought that was awesome. So, thumbs up, man. I think you got a great track record, Mr. Affleck.
This one's gonna be interesting, though. I mean, like, you've got a couple of, like, you know, difficult tasks ahead of him. First of all, you said, like, you know, we got to get some big actors. Who in the living hell could play Jack Nicholson except for a de-aged version of Jack Nicholson? Like, because I kind of think about this. He's such an anomaly in Hollywood, especially early Jack Nicholson, because he looked like he was 85 then, but he also looked sexy. He was like, you know, intense, but cool, but fun. There's no balance there that, like, you know, any real actor can adhere to. So, you know, I think you got to be nuts to have to, you know, like, you know, take on that role as an actor. I mean, plenty of actors are nuts. They'll do it. But I think that what you want to do for that is try to work with some kind of unknown for that, just because, you know, the moment you announce someone, everyone's going to lose their minds. It's a little bit easier with Faye Dunaway. It's a little bit easier. Well, the Roman Polanski thing is going to be interesting because not only, like, who do you cast as Roman Polanski, but, you know, essentially Roman Polanski is going to be the main character of this movie. And the movie is about trying to make a movie. And we know that Roman Polanski is rather complicated. Now, none of the stuff he did that was horrible was while this movie was happening or while this movie was being made. So do you ignore it? Do you, like, you know, make him an unlikable character? I mean, you know, the storyteller in me says, hey, that stuff happened later. Right? By the way, the stuff we're talking about is that he was, you know, accused of rape. And I say accused of rape, even though, like, you know, there's overwhelming evidence and he's left the country and hasn't come back to the country since. So most likely, I think it's kind of like, you know, unlikely that he did it. But regardless of that, there's where the accused comes in there. And I just look at this and I say, like, I first of all, I'm excited for this movie. I really want to see it. Chinatown's one of my favorite movies. Like, it's really, really good. And I'm really fascinated to see this movie, but it's going to be a little bit icky if, you know, he's just kind of like, maybe he's like not that big of a character in it. And they just sort of choose to, like, you know, focus on John Huston and stuff. Which, who knows how that goes.
Yeah. And with casting like Jack Nicholson, a young Jack Nicholson, and casting a Roman Polanski, it's like you can get into, like, I'm looking from a casting standpoint. Do you go with someone to do a complete impersonation, like a complete impression? Do you go with the Freddie Mercury angle, or do you go with this more like the Steve Jobs angle to try to capture just the spirit of him? You know, with the Tom Hanks playing both Walt Disney and Mr. Rogers, right? Yeah. It's not where it's like it's an exact, but it's just he captures the spirit. You're going to get people saying either or, but it's going to be an interesting choice because Jack Nicholson is such a, I'm not going to do the impression here, I'm terrible at it, but you know, such an amazing character. Yeah,
I'm going to call Ben Affleck. I'm calling Ben Affleck. You are up for the role.
I got the part. All right, see you.
I'm out of here.
But, yeah.
I mean, they're very good points. And the other trouble there is if you get a young actor to play any of these roles, you don't want them to get typecast so early, and that be the only thing that really carries on, their career. So
typecast as a Jack Nicholson type.
Right.
It'd be rough for you, dude.
Right.
Well,
Or I mean, like, who wants to be linked to Roman Polanski, right? Like, there's just certain Google searches that you really don't want to be out there, and that's probably one of them. So, yeah, that's me. So lack of a transition here, but did any of you participate in the Comic-Con panels, the virtual Comic-Con at home? Or I think it was a week and a half ago at this point, 2 weeks ago?
I have not yet, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the big campaigns, one of the big complaints with Comic-Con at home was that the actual panels were pre-recorded. So the comment section was disabled. There wasn't an opportunity for that community that I think Comic-Con has really become known for. And today we found out that New York Comic-Con, which is usually at the Javits Center in New York, is going to go completely virtual as well. And there's already been minor announcements about Starz and DreamWorks Animation and Hulu being present. And CBS All Access really diving into its Star Trek stuff there. But one of the big changes that they're making, and I think they probably learned their lesson from watching what happened with San Diego Comic-Con, is that they're going to be live and on-demand panels and sessions, and there'll be the opportunity for the audience to participate in Q&As. So it's kind of interesting, but I guess my question for both of you is, have you been to any of these, Comic-Cons or anything of this sort when we were allowed to go out and do things in the U.S.? I know, Brandon, you have a little more freedom up there.
I went to Fan Expo once a long time ago, and it's basically the Vancouver version of just, I don't believe that there was any like major studios up here just to announce anything big of TV shows or movies. It's just like a big celebration, or I like to call it the celebrity zoo. When you have like all your celebrities just like who were famous back in the day just to sit in booths, and it really is like a zoo. And how would the actor feel if they're just sitting there like, I was on Star Trek in this one episode, and then just a bunch of people just walk by. It's like, who the hell are you? And then everyone's going to go see Christopher Lloyd, right? Where he's just chewing on a sandwich and going, "Oh, you like me back in Back to the Future?" It was just one of those. Those are fun, but I've never been to an expo or a Comic-Con where there's actual big news there. So it would be fun to go, though. It'd be a hell of an experience.
Yeah.
When it comes to me, I'm always the one that like never really goes to the Comic-Con stuff, but I'm like, checking the computer, finding out what's been announced, like all excited when it happens. So I definitely pay attention to it. So, this virtual thing might be great for me, but
yeah. And I think this one could be cool because I'm going to just assume that they're going to want to make some, make some waves and try to get some announcements out there that give it some better press than we saw at Comic-Con. I think DC is kind of stealing some of that thunder with their DC fandom event where they were like, all right, if things are going virtual, then we're going to control it all and do our own thing. But it will be interesting to see what comes out of that. So final big story before we talk about Host, because we wanted to get in a little bit more chat about that since Sean just watched it, and I know Brandon hasn't seen it yet, but the Fear Street film trilogy, which was originally set up at Fox, has since now moved to Netflix. I'm sorry. I'm like reading it as I'm talking, but it's since moved to Netflix after the Disney and Fox merger kind of left it up in the air. But the financier had signed a deal with Netflix, which took the films there. What they are looking to do is, and of course, the Film Street book series comes from R.L. Stine, famous for the Goosebumps book series. Fear Street, I think, is a little bit more mature than Goosebumps, if I remember my teenage reading years accurately. But we will be getting all three of these films next summer, it seems like, one each month in what Netflix is calling the Summer of Fear. So again, we have films going to Netflix, but seems kind of cool for them, especially when we were talking about Hulu really being the horror focus.
This seems interesting for me because, they're going from Disney Plus to Netflix, which means, like you were just saying, they're a little bit more mature. these might mess with people a little bit. Like maybe they saw them on Disney Plus and they're like, no, we can't have these on here. Just like, you can't have Woman in the Window on Disney Plus. Like, that has to go to Netflix because, that would be a weird situation. But I think it's the same with these where it's just, they're a little bit too thrilling. It's fun that they're, that's exactly what the Into the Dark is, a movie a month. And so they're doing these 3 months, just kind of a summer of fear sort of situation. They almost will probably treat it like it's a film series, but almost like a TV series, just kind of, like just saying like, this is the next one. This is the next one. But I did read that they are different stories essentially, or at least they're from different stories, I believe. So it could be like an anthology series, something like that. They could market it that way. But either way, this sounds exciting.
Yeah.
I'm just looking up some of the old covers. Like they look very like cheesy 80s books. I see like one called Bad Moonlight, What Holly Heard, and it has like some teenagers, like the guys with the Letterman jacket, and some girls like, oh my god. And I can just see if Disney made this. Oh, maybe Netflix is a better spot for it with their success of Stranger Things. So yeah, if you're gonna go with like a scary horror Halloween type story, I feel like you have a little bit more of a leeway on Netflix than on Disney. So I think that's the right move. And, by you saying like a 1 month a film, that intrigued me. I don't even know anything about this. And, having one film a month, if the first one's good, that's going to really entice people to stay tuned for the next ones.
Yeah, and again, if it's just mindless entertainment, then hey, we've talked about that in the past about how sometimes you don't need the film to be anything to, that's going to be award competition, but just having a film that entertains you, and that's what these books were growing up. Just like Goosebumps. Goosebumps were cheesy. Goosebumps were what they were, but they were hella popular. And R.L. Stine has a little bit of a, I wouldn't say it's a cult following, but I think he's well known based on those books growing up. So it should be interesting.
Brandon, you were making fun of those covers. Those covers gave me nightmares. I didn't even read the books, but the images on some of them, like when there was like the scared babysitter in the window, that was terrifying to me.
Oh, I'm not making fun of it. I'm just saying they look really 80s. That's all.
Oh, okay. So the 80s do scare a lot of people. So I'll give you that.
They look cool, man. I mean, I see one. It's like the prom queen. She's looking in the mirror, and there's like a skeleton one. Like, yeah, man, bring it on. Let's do it.
And what's crazy though? I think the first one is going to be set back all the way in the 1600s. So who knows what's going on there? It kind of reminds me of like a Scooby-Doo type thing. It's like teenagers in Shady Side, Ohio, that are investigating the supernatural happenings in their town. So who knows? Who knows? But speaking of horror, let's talk about what we wanted to kind of end with tonight, and that was the film Host. We had mentioned it last week. Host is a horror film that is 56 minutes of runtime, which was released on Shudder 2 weeks ago, and is about 6 individuals, 6 friends that are participating in a seance over Zoom. And the movie was completely filmed through Zoom using a laptop, and I think, got a really solid movie. Sean, I know that you're not a big horror person, and you did watch Host. So what were your thoughts?
I can't get over how good this film was. and I was just like, oh, cool. I'm getting a subscription to Shudder to see a 50-minute movie. This is probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. And I could not get over it. I watched it during the day, which actually was still terrified. But I watched it during the day. Pretty much about 10 feet from Sam, who during the quiet parts would drop her stapler and scare the shit out of me. So I appreciated that. But it was amazing. Like I could look at a few different ways. First of all, it scares you from the beginning. Like from the beginning, you're already creeped out. It sets up everything perfect. It uses the whole like gimmick of the Zoom computer screen without it being really a gimmick. It uses everything properly. It uses all like the tricks of Zoom, but uses them properly and doesn't just say, oh, we have to get this in and we have to get that in. Each one of them helps with the scares, which is marvelous. The runtime, which is short, is with that runtime that's short. I really think about it. First of all, there's a purpose to that runtime. I won't go further, but and even with that 56-minute runtime, I look at this and you see character development. You see like different characters happening. There's not the typical like, everyone gets picked off until the one girl. They kind of change that around. They talk about how difficult it is to be friends during the time of a pandemic while demons are chasing them during a Zoom enhanced seance.
So guys, I know we're being chased by demons right now, but I just want to say
follow my Instagram, check out my TikTok.
I can't get over it. I mean, it shows it too. It's just one of these things where I'm just blown away by how this movie could be this good. Like,
I'm with you. And Brendan, I know you haven't seen it, but one thing that we that Sean and I had talked about on the side, and I think is a really good discussion about this is a very low budget film. Obviously, it was made over quarantine and the way that it was filmed and all of that. But it was very, very effective in what it was trying to do. And as someone that, works in the industry and understands kind of the behind the scenes costs that can mount up, it's always fascinating to me when we get a low budget film like this that really knocks it out of the park, when there's some big budget films that have all the money in the world to spend and can't get the traction.
Yeah, but just because you have a big budget doesn't mean you have a good movie. Like, look at The Lone Ranger, right? I think that was one of the most expensive movies ever made. I defended that movie, but I was just lying to myself. I was just like, I like it. Anyway, but I like when you're talking about it, like, you sell the movie pretty well, Sean. So even though I'm not a big horror person, like, this looks interesting, and I've heard some things about it. Even though when I look at the trailer, I just hear my ex-girlfriend going back in the day, we should go see Unfriended.
It is far and away better than Unfriended.
Anyway, but yeah, and it's funny. David from Flex Talk's like, dude, the host is terrible. Don't see it. And but he's the only other person I talked to about it. So
I didn't know he didn't like it.
It shows 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, so that's pretty intriguing. But yeah, like you said, like, I think of movies like Blair Witch Project. I think of movies like Paranormal Activity, and just going outside of horror too, like The Hangover. Like, that movie was so successful because its budget was very high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Blair Witch Project and Paranormal Activity still, like, those were low budget movies. And even thinking of it and going into like teen comedy, like American Pie, right? First time director, first time writer, low budget. And it doesn't really matter how much of a budget you have. Like, that shows talent to me as a filmmaker, if you're able to convey a story and with character development and emotional investment. Yeah. Like when you're talking about it being 56 minutes, it's around there, and you're saying that there's actual like character development in that, I mean, going off what you're saying, it's pretty impressive. So again, if you give Martin Scorsese $10, he can make a great movie, because he's talented. So, but if you give some schmuck $500 million, he's going to create a $500 million piece of crap. So
yeah.
But budget helps if used correctly. But again, it's the story that really counts.
I do think we see a lot more success with low budget horror films. Talking about Paranormal Activity, talking about Blair Witch. I think it lends itself to that a little bit more. Less is more in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. But the other thing that I think is really that Host had going for it, and when you're talking about movies with first time directors or low budgets, is that those expectations aren't so high. And I think that is also something that can take even a mediocre movie that comes out and paint it in a higher light or put it on a pedestal because we're just impressed that, this movie kind of came out of nowhere and surprised us. In terms of scares, I will say that there's a few of them in this movie. And I actually forgot about one, and I don't know if I was like pushing it out of my mind, but there's something with a clown mask, and the way that is used, it was just, it was perfect. Like I think I was literally saying like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
So we really like go through all of this kind of situations where we look at there's a big battle where we talk about the jump scare versus like the creepy, like the creepy sort of atmospheric scare. And I think that, the jump scare has been known as cheap. The jump scare has been known as not lasting that long. This one has quite a bit of jump scares, and they are placed properly and they are used and they work to establish the environment. In terms of some scenes that have not left me, I'm not going to say much further, but the death of one of the characters, like, I mean, shook me to my core. And I talked offline with Joe about this, and it was just that death was one of the most horrifying things like in a while. It really like is just disturbing. And like it sounds now it's a tough sell because I'm just like, there's a disturbing death of a young girl.
Right.
It really is just like one of these things where if you like horror, this works well, even if it's not in this, like, you know, even if it's not these 70 minutes, they could have made it 70 minutes. They could have gotten into the legend of the demons or something like that, the legend of the creatures that fall. They decided not to do that. They decided not to put rules to this, which is interesting because I usually love rules. I want the rules of my universe. In this, they decided, nope, let's just scare the shit out of you. And I was like, okay.
Don't worry, we'll be getting like a sequel that's on House Party or something, or like Facebook Messenger. You know, that's coming down the road. But, you know, back to the jump scares and stuff, I think one of the things this did effectively was played with the expectations that it knew you had when it came to the scares, right? Like when you're watching a horror movie, when you're watching Paranormal Activity or anything like that, you know when something's about to come. It's that whole famous, like you're sitting there with your eye, like your hands over your eyes, just looking through
your ears. Like,
yeah, exactly right. And and that's the other thing, jumping off it a little bit. Sound in horror movies and sometimes the lack of sound is also extremely effective. And I usually don't like horror movies outside of the theater because of that. Because to get the full effect, I think you need to be there. Another thing that I think this played really well. But yeah, it was effective in all those ways. And again, just being a low budget film that popped onto Shudder, which I don't know has been. It's there, right? It's doing well in its own sense because it's AMC funded and
yeah. I knew what it was. I knew what Shudder was. Like, I just said, like, I'm not getting Shudder. Like, what do I need to do? But
yeah. So I highly recommend it. Do you? One of the other questions that I think has popped up over the years as we see Candyman coming out soon, about a remake of Candyman, but we also are seeing a new Saw entry next year. We're also seeing another Paranormal Activity is in the works. Do we need some revisits of these series, or is there a lack of originality when it comes to horror films?
Go for it, Brandon. You take this one.
I mean, like that's funny too. When like we can break down that question too. It's like, do we need insert movie here? Do we need this movie? I think on a fundamental level, the answer is always no. We don't need that to survive as human beings. But in terms of the industry, like it's a name, right? And horror movies are pretty cheap, right? Like these Paranormal Activity movies, like the budgets aren't that high. And as long as you have people who, like the people I know who watch Paranormal Activity, they're not movie fans. They're not people who know who all the actors are. They're people who don't know who all the directors are. They're people who don't follow like movie releases. So they go, oh, let's just watch this Paranormal Activity movie. There's another one. Okay, let's watch that. And since that they're cheap, I think they almost always bring in a profit. Don't quote me on that. But yeah, I do think, and I don't like to use the word cash grab, but whenever I see like, like Conjuring 2, then Annabelle Creations, Annabelle this, Annabelle that, and to me, who just someone looking on the outside, it does feel like corporate going, okay, well, let's just make this other movie again because it's a name, because people will go see it. We're not going to spend that much of a budget on it, and we're going to get a profit. So it's just another it's always a safe bet to make. I'll say that.
I think you're right there too, especially in the US. We see a lot of horror films get released in January, which is often a dead zone. No pun intended. But I think that, it definitely, it allows for low budget films to kind of make an impact. And people now expect that to be the time that they're going to get those little horror films that maybe people look forward to each and every year. There definitely is a horror following out there, but it'll be interesting to see kind of what we get in the future, because I think that all those previously known or previously expected timeframes for releases or previous rules of the box office are now all up for grabs.
It's frustrating to me to see something like, I think about the new Saw movie coming out. It's it's called Jigsaw, and it's like, it's different than the other ones. And I'm like, okay, just make a different movie then. It's like, oh, it's Paranormal Activity, but it's totally different from the other ones. Okay, then make a different movie. Like, have something where you don't need to have that franchise. And I think Brandon's right. They're using those names to get the money, get the people in the seats. And it's unfortunate, but also there is like, a scoffing at something like that. There is a scoffing at a Saw 25. There is a scoffing at, Paranormal Activity 72. And, on the other hand, there may be plenty of people, but I think that will eventually decline because the first Paranormal Activity was an original idea. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people saw it. The first Saw was an original idea, and a lot of people saw it. Now, am I being naive because these were 10 to 15 years ago? Yeah, maybe I'm a little bit naive, and now we don't need that, and now maybe I was cynical and say there's no original ideas anymore. But I just think that sometimes original ideas like this, like I look at Letterboxd, Host is the top reviewed movie on Letterboxd. Now, that's because there's no movies at all, but at the same time, like, there, and Hosted, technically, we could argue Host is not an original idea because there's Unfriended or whatever. But, I think Host has way more originality than those movies do, oddly enough.
And I've said this over and over again. Who among us has not held a seance over Zoom?
Oh, God. I have my candle right here if we want
to. Out of control over there.
Oh, he's got it.
he's all about it. I don't have any candles. Good, I'll live.
I got two of them right here. Bath water or something.
I just recently moved, so they're all packed away somewhere. But
gotcha.
Well, guys, it's been a fun week of movie news, and Brandon, I'm glad that you were able to jump on. Let's talk a little bit about the new releases that are coming out this week before we jump into the promotion of both of your sites as well. First and foremost, we have Project Power coming out on Netflix, which I know Sean is just itching to talk about. So, Sean, go ahead.
Oh boy, this trailer really just really did it for me. I'm confused by this. It seems like it's the weirdest thing. The premise seems like it could be great or could be pretty rough. It's got the star power, but they're used in the weirdest way. I'm watching this. I'm watching this out of sheer morbid curiosity and maybe just curiosity.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up right now, and I'm seeing the bullet in the head, slow motion, Joseph Gordon-Levitt thing. And I mean, like, I see Jamie Foxx looking all cool with the shades. It kind of looks like Bad Boys. So, again, the movies that we're talking about that are coming out, and again, I've just been so out of the loop with movies coming out to VOD. I don't know if it's just a lack of interest or if it's just like, I'm just wanting to watch movies that have already come out and like trying to get my list shorter. But
Old Faithfuls.
Yeah, Old Faithfuls, I guess. But you know what? It looks very interesting, like from what you've told me. And just this whole slow motion bullet to the head thing. So sure, bring it on.
It kind of has a Bad Boys vibe with a Limitless vibe with a Wanted vibe, like all those things combined.
Well, you take a pill and get a superpower, and I mean, I've been taking Lexapro for like 2 years now, and that hasn't really, done anything for me. So I come on, help me out with this. This is just unrealistic, really. I mean,
I've got some recommendations for you if Lexapro doesn't work, so don't worry.
We'll talk off air.
There we go. Well, the next one that we have coming out, which is going to be on Disney Plus, is Magic Camp, starring Adam Devine and Gillian Jacobs. And this is a movie that was supposed to, I believe, come out in 2018 originally. I don't know if it was made back then and has just been sitting looking for a release or what. But Magic Camp is following this is the quote-unquote summary. A straight-laced banker returns to Magic Camp, which he attended years ago as a boy, to work as a compassionate and fun-loving counselor, while also keeping his eye on winning first place in the upcoming Golden Wand competition.
Golden Wand competition? Is that what they're calling it?
That's what they're calling
Adam
it.
Devine is going to try to win a Golden Wand, and this is on Disney Plus.
Hey, baby, you want to go on my Golden Wand award? I won at Magic Camp. You weak in the knees yet? Huh? Like, oh, man.
So that's coming out. We'll move on because this could go really negative.
Please go. Keep going.
Oh, man.
Sure. On Apple TV Plus, who we talked about a little bit earlier, we have a documentary called Boys State, which is following I believe the story is that it's a bunch of young men that head to a camp in Texas, and it's kind of like the breeding ground for future politicians in Texas, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's the summary.
Yeah, it's 1,100 boys go to this camp, and they try to get one of them tries to get elected like a governor of the camp and stuff like that, and it just goes into like just how politics is now. And I'm this one that I just watched the trailer a little while ago, and I am so excited.
Yeah, it looks interesting.
Yeah, I'm just looking it up right now. Like I always like. Yeah, it's always a documentary. So I always like, political documentaries. What's his name? Michael Moore. Like, I love his movies. I think they're great. I find, though, that movies like this, as soon as you talk about them, if you want to make a review for them, you're just going to open up a whole can of worms. You know what I mean? So, like, you're going to have, because I don't know what Boy State's about. So I don't know if, like, I find that no matter what political movie you're going to make, you're going to be labeled as a liberal or as a conservative. You're going to be Republican or Democrat. And as soon as you make a political movie, and like I like watching this kind of stuff, so this is totally up my alley. But I find as soon as you talk about it, you're no longer talking about the movie. You're talking about other things. I wish luck to people who are going to be posting their reviews about Boys State, because it's not going to be about the movie in the comment section.
Well, everything is so.
Oh, go for it.
Everything is so polarized right now and so politicized. I mean, you, Brendan, like in a different way of, I think, tackling this. You mentioned this on a live stream the other day you were doing when someone kept bringing up masks and stuff and how polarizing that is. And you kept saying, in the U.S. it is. In the U.S. it is. And I think you're exactly right there. I mean, the state of politics down here is just an absolute shit show. So you're right. I think it's going to be interesting seeing how this movie even portrays itself and what how it walks that line, and if it's kind of condescending towards what they're trying to do in like a conservative upbringing, or it's more of a this is politics starting from a young age in both camps.
Yeah, I had issues with my review for The Swamp, the one that I talked about earlier. And honestly, I had a lot of paragraphs, like, because I do like my reviews on slides, and I had a lot of paragraphs that I straight up deleted because I said, this is not about the movie. And so that's the real important thing I just had to remember here. Now, I looked at the trailer for Boy State. There are both conservatives running for this governor and there are liberals running for this governor. And it's really interesting to see them interact. I'd check out that trailer. It's really like, it drew me in big time. And who knows what the movie will be like, but I'm just so fascinated.
Yeah. Totally. It's going to be interesting. Did your review for The Swamp get a lot of shit because Matt Gaetz has such a annoying looking face?
I had like 2 or 3 paragraphs on Matt Gaetz, and I deleted them all, and I didn't put his name in it. I
haven't watched that yet, but I want to, only because I want to see how you explain what it's about coincide or jives with the fact that he's one of the 3, because
it's great, dude. He's like, because like you're right, punchable face, but he's also just really good. Like he was at his home rally and stuff like that, and someone was just talking about how the Star Spangled Banner isn't like sang in schools anymore or something, and the lady was kind of like speaking that sort of stuff, and her comment was rather incoherent, and instead of him addressing that comment, what he did is he's just like, want to sing a few bars? And then all of a sudden, like, she sang a few bars, then the whole place sang a few bars, and I'm like, he just evaded a question and made everybody love him. Damn, this guy's good. I don't like it, but this guy's good.
Politician. Did he go to that camp?
I love it if this was like, 10 years ago and we see a young Matt Gaetz there.
Yeah, it's like a Boyhood thing. They've been following Matt Gaetz all along. So the final movie we have on our list here is a good old-fashioned, just cheesy horror film. It looks like it's called Cut and Chop, and the quick summary is that a troubled method actor gets carried away with his work on a role playing a butcher. So, hey, sounds like a perfect cheesy horror film that I would love to see.
Absolutely watching this. I didn't even know what it was about, and I am absolutely watching this.
Brandon, we definitely appreciate you coming. Tell everyone where they can find you and what you got coming up.
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me, Joe. And Sean, it was nice to meet you, buddy. So you can find me on Brando Critic on YouTube, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Letterboxd is a bit empty at the moment because I'm trying to change or transfer over 10 years of written reviews over, so it's taking a long time. But my main content is on YouTube, and as of right now, I normally do movie reviews of the latest releases, and I do trailer reactions and that kind of stuff. But during this quarantine time, I've been doing just first-time reaction videos to big movies like Hook and No Country for Old Men, so those movies are coming out. I just did 7. I got 1 coming out tomorrow, which is going to be pretty fun. And I've been doing mostly those, and of course I've been doing watch-alongs on my channel, and I'm doing watch-alongs on these guys' channels and showing up on podcasts. And yeah, that's where you can find me. So thank you so much for being here again. I appreciate it.
Of course. Sean, where can people find you?
People can find my completely middle of the road review of The Swamp on Instagram at Math Teacher Movies, as well as many other reviews. I do a lot of the new movies, but I'm doing the same thing as Brandon, where I'm just kind of going down the list of everything I haven't seen. And so I do some retro reviews. I do some Monologue Monday, Final Shot Friday, What the Oscars Got Wrong Wednesday. That's a stretch of an alliteration, but I go for it. But all of those are available on Instagram at Math Teacher Movies.
Awesome. And I can be found a Guy at the Movies on Instagram, Guy at the Movies 1 on Twitter, and the Guy at the Movies.com, theguyatthemovies.com. It's actually just guyatthemovies.com. Coming up, there's 2 things I want to promote real quick. Harry Potter Movies Edition Quizzo has been moved from last Wednesday to next Wednesday, August 19th at 7:30 p.m. Brandon, you should be all ready to go with Harry Potter Quizzo, right? It should all be...
I went on my Potter pilgrimage 2 years ago, where I read the first 2 books on a train in London and went to some of the filming locations. So that was my Potter pilgrimage. So I'd say I got some ammunition in the corner for it.
There you go. And the other thing, these 2 guys will be a part of this, but on August 28th through the 30th, the first ever Guy at the Movies Virtual Film Festival. I made that such a lengthy name. Every time I go to type it out, I'm like, why did I do that? But the schedule will be out by the end of the week. We have a packed schedule, about 25 different partners from YouTube and Instagram involved, as well as some special guests who range from co-directors of films to voice actors for animated films to a Disney animator to all kinds of different fun individuals that will be participating through podcasts, through Q&As, through watch-alongs. It is just going to be 3 nerdy fun days. You can register for absolutely free at guyatthemovies.com/film festival or follow on Instagram Guys Film Festival for all the latest fun news. It's going to be a blast. So I'm really looking forward to it. I'm really nervous about it, but really looking forward to it. And excited to see these guys there as well. Other than that, for our podcast, you can listen to the Guy at the Movies podcast with Joe and Sean on any podcast platform, whether that is Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, any of the other small ones that I always forget the names of. We are there. And finally, if you are in the U.S. especially, please wear that damn mask. Other than that, we'll see you next week.
Bye.